Moje ime je Ivan Bengeri i u svakoj epizodi vodim vas na novo putovanje. Dobrodošli u novu epizodu podcasta na koji se možete pretplatiti na Apple Podcasts ili bilo kojoj drugoj platformi za slušanje koju koristite. Ako vam se sviđaju tematika i gosti, veselim se vašim recenzijama, a na taj način i ovaj će podcast dopriti do novih slušatelja. Zahvaljujem vam na tome. U 6. epizodi ugostio sam Paula Bradburya, kojeg mnogi znaju kao upornog kritičara hrvatskog turizma i birokratskog aparata općenito, no malo vas vjerojatno zna da je Paul prije nego što je doselio u Hrvatsku, na otok Hvar, posjetio 95 zemalja, a uz to je napisao i 2 knjige. Znali ste to? Pričat ćemo upravo o tome. U ovoj epizodi upoznat ćete Paula putnika. Dobrodošao, Paul.
Dobar dan, kako ste?
Dobro. Hoćemo li nastaviti na hrvatskom ili ipak engleski?
Ako vam ne smeta, bolje na engleskom, zato što moja legendica punica kaže da zvučim kao neki kreten na hrvatskom.
Dobro, onda ću ja se truditi na engleskom i sigurno ću koji put ispasti kreten.
Odlično.
Ali jedno pitanje na hrvatskom. Osim punica i osim uhljeb, koja ti je najdraža riječ hrvatska? Možda 2-3.
I wrote an article a few years ago on my portal Total Croatian News, which Index then published in Croatian, and I put my 5 favorite words. The first one is "I'm a many." I just think that's a really great phrase that I use all the time. The second one is potpis, which doesn't sound very strange to Croatians perhaps, but if you put 2 words together, pot and pis, lonac and the rest, then it is quite funny. And we actually have a saying in English that if you have no money, we say you do not have a pot to piss in. And so there is an Australian guys actually formed a company on Brač, Potpis Deo, because they thought it was so funny. And then obviously Vukoyebina is a favorite, and I've been to some interesting places in Croatia that fit that description and the wider region. And then I'm also very fond of the word radodajka, which I think is just a very expressive word. And then the final phrase I had was I translated it into English as a girl in Newcastle on a Friday night, which is a radodajka Vukoyebina. But you have a wonderful, wonderful language, and I just wish I understood a lot more of it, because the slang and the way you guys swear, it's super expressive. It's really, really interesting.
And what would be Vukoyebina in your country? Which part?
Which part? I think anything close to Newcastle and the northeast, and parts of the Black Country outside Birmingham.
I'm pretty much sure that people in Croatia, they perceive you as a critic of our tourism and a guy who has a really realistic view on Croatia, Croats and everything that happens here. But today we are here to talk about your travels. Before you moved to Croatia, you visited 95 countries.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have lived and worked in different places, and I moved to Croatia when I was 32, and by that time I'd been to 95 countries, and it was only 2 years ago, some 16 years later, that I went to my first new country since I came to Croatia. So now I'm at 96 and hope to get to 100 before I die.
Your first trip was when you were 18?
I traveled a little bit around Europe with my family, but when I was 18, I moved to Germany, and I became a Zimmermädchen, like a Čistačica, and I was the first male chambermaid in this 4-star hotel in Munich, and I got fired after 4 days because my friend made a joke about a snake being on the loose around the hotel, and the Germans didn't like it very much. But I cleaned rooms for about...
But your friend did it, not you.
But by association we were together. So then I found a job in the next hotel, and I cleaned. I think it was 2,710 toilets in my chambermaiding career, and I have to say it was the most physically demanding job I've ever done. And my friend and I, we had a plan to buy a one-way ticket to South America, and I went first. And I was staying in Guyana with a school friend, and we were supposed to meet in Manaus outside the Opera House. This was before internet. This was before all that stuff. We were corresponding by postcards through the American Express travelers checks.
It was like 20 years ago?
This was 30 years ago. This was
30 years ago.
1988, before you were born.
I just started elementary school that year.
And so we agreed we would meet on October the 1st, 1989, in front of the Opera House in Manaus in the Amazon at 1 o'clock. And we would wait for the other person for 4 days, between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And if the other person had not come by October the 4th at 2 o'clock, then you were on your own. And I was there for 4 days, and I was there for 1 hour for 4 days. And at 2 o'clock on October the 4th, I suddenly realized that I was alone in the middle of the Amazon with no real idea how to travel, no idea where to go, $2,700 in my pocket. And I just panicked. I had no idea what to do. So that was my first sort of experience of international travel outside the comfort zone.
So it was not intentional to be a solo travel trip?
No, most of my life has been slučajno, actually. I've gone from one thing to another.
Same like Croatian tourism, right?
Exactly. I think they've been following me since I was a baby and doing their strategy based on my travels. So I basically spent then another 4 months going around South America, having the most amazing experience. But I was on I went from Brazil to La Paz, and there was no road on the map, but we found this Brazil nut factory that was carrying Brazil nuts to La Paz, and they sold us a ticket on top of the truck for $25, and they said it would take 2 days. It took 6 days. And I was terrified of heights, and we were on these mountain roads through the Andes, and honestly, it was one of the scariest experiences I've had. But we made it finally. So that was my first trip, and then finally I decided I was on one of these Inca trails with a Swiss guy, and I was thinking about my life, and I decided to come back to the UK, go to university, and so I went to Rio de Janeiro, which was the cheapest place to get back for tickets, and I had, I think, $1,100 left, and $600 left. $600 left in my pocket, and I was told I could get cheap flights to Madrid, and I went to the travel agency in Rio, and the cheapest ticket was $1,100, which was $500 more than I had, and I was literally thought I was stuck there forever. So then I tried to get some work on one of the ships sailing from Rio to Hamburg, and I was told that I could go the next day, but then somebody warned me that a pretty young boy like me might have a lot of interesting times on the ship, so I decided not to do that. And eventually I found a travel agency that was selling tickets for $593, but only to the Brazilian nationals, because they had a special rate for nationals at the time. And I managed to persuade him to sell me a ticket, so I had $7 left. But the ticket went 5 days later, so I was sleeping rough on the beach at Copacabana for 5 nights, not eating, not drinking, and then finally got to the airport, and somebody had stolen my shoes, so I had no shoes left, and I hadn't shaved for 9 months, and they told me that the economy class was full, and I thought this guy had tricked me. So they upgraded me to business class. So there I was, sort of flying business class, having not washed for a week, and the guy next to me wasn't that happy.
I've spent 3 months in Brazil 5 or 6 years ago, and I found it really dangerous place if you don't know where to go, where to move. How was Brazil 30 years ago?
I mean, you have to understand that I was a very naive traveller. I still am a very naive traveller. My wife can't believe that, and my kids can't believe I'm still alive when they hear the stories of my travels before. But back then, I remember that I got off the bus at Buenos Aires coming from Chile, and somebody had put mustard all over my rucksack, and then everybody came to help me, washing it off, and then suddenly somebody unclipped my money belt, and I managed to stop it. But then, so there was some petty theft, but it wasn't really that bad. And then I remember when I got to Rio, I got off the bus, and to walk down to the beach was down this road. And there was nobody on the road, and I started walking, and this guy came towards me, and I'd just been on the bus for 24 hours. It was hot. I was broke. I was stressed about getting the flight. And he came to me with a baseball bat and was just like, dinero, like give me money. And I was just so, like, at the end of my...
$7 syrup in the pocket.
This was before I got the ticket, so I didn't even know if I was going to do that. And I just said, just fuck off, would you? And I just kept walking. And I was just feeling this baseball bat coming onto my head. And I got to the safety of the street, and I looked around, and he was just standing there with his just eyes staring at me like no one's ever done that before. And, of course, it was incredibly stupid. But I've somehow managed to be quite fortunate with my travels. I've never been shot or stabbed or beaten up yet, but there's still time.
Yeah, now it's much easier because you can have some money in Brazil on debit card, and locals actually they have like 500 kunas on it, and if someone stops them to rob them, they just go to ATM or give money. Because first advice I got from my friend when I went to Brazil, he told me, if someone tries to rob you, just give him money, mobile phone or anything else. Yeah,
I think in future I would do that, but at the time
it was not possible at that time.
Yeah.
And
I didn't have that much money.
And then, what did you have any dangerous situations in other countries?
Yeah, I mean, again, looking back, incredibly dangerous. But at the time, they just didn't seem too bad. I mean, I did a big trip, which I guess we'll talk about later, when I crossed the border at midnight, walking through the snow from Montenegro to Kosovo with K4 troops. And I surprised them because there were no hitchhikers at midnight in the snow in March of 2001. And so I had a gun to my head at that point. I had a gun to my head in Rwanda in 1994 when I worked as a humanitarian aid worker because I, by mistake, destroyed a roadblock. So, it wasn't very clever. So, things like that, looking back, were incredibly dangerous.
Sober? You did it sober?
Sober. Actually, it was a funny story because I was working as an aid worker, and I was doing humanitarian food distribution to all the returning refugees from the camps in Tanzania and Goma. And I had a team of 5 local Rwandese, great team. And in the morning at 5 o'clock, we would leave with a convoy of trucks of food and seeds, like 150 metric tons. And we'd just arrive in a field in the middle of Africa. And word had got around, and so at about 7 o'clock, you'd see the first silhouette of somebody walking over the horizon. And some of them walked 20 kilometers just to get this aid. And we delivered it, and it was the most amazing experience of my life, I have to say. And then every day on the way back, I would take the team out for beers and kebabs, and we had a good team spirit. And they had these military checkpoints all over the country, and it was basically 2 oil drums full of sand and then a rope in the middle. And the car, I was driving a Toyota Land Cruiser, and it had the logo of our agency, Care International. So it was clear that we were aid workers, and they got to know me after a while. And so one day they lowered the rope, and I went through. But the rope got stuck in the wheel, and I did the turbo acceleration, and I was trying to go from 0 to 150 in 3 seconds. And it took a bit of time to get going. And then I looked through the window, the mirror, and these 2 oil drums were rolling down the hill after me, and I couldn't stop laughing. And so I just thought, let's just keep driving. So I kept driving, doing about 140. And then in the mirror, I saw this Toyota Land Cruiser pickup doing 160 with 7 soldiers with Kalashnikovs. And I pulled over, they put a gun to my head, and I still couldn't stop laughing. And then they took out one of my staff, and they just beat him. And obviously that was a horrible thing. So those sort of situations, I mean, I was in a plane crash with a Boeing 727 when we landed in Eritrea. But again, it was just such a surreal experience. And looking back, yeah, of course it was dangerous. But I'm a firm believer in trying anything once. And I've been incredibly lucky not to be in more trouble than I've been. I've never been in prison yet, I don't think. But I've been in some strange situations in Gaza and the West Bank and stuff like that. But So far, so good.
Sadly, that area is in the news these days. When did you visit the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, I went in. In 2001 on this trip, I ended up staying in a really interesting place. It was like a squat in West Jerusalem, and there was a liberal Jewish daughter of a very, very right-wing Jewish family that lived in Gaza before. This is when they had Jewish settlements there, and she was giving shelter to a Palestinian Christian who was living illegally, and so it was this really, really interesting sort of thing. And so that was a really amazing education into life in Israel there. And then one day that they were allowing tourists into Gaza at the time, but they checked everybody. And so I went for like a day trip just to go in, and I mean, it was horrifying, and that was 20 years ago, and God knows what it's like today. And I don't really want to get into the politics of Israel versus Palestine on this because it's very complicated. But I just can't imagine what it must be like living in that hell. And if you look at the size of Gaza, it's 20% bigger than the island of Hvar. Hvar has 11,000 inhabitants. It has beaches all around. You're free to go wherever you want. Gaza has 2 million people with nowhere to go. Yeah.
I just hope the things that are going on there now will stop soon.
Yeah, me too. But there is no solution, unfortunately, to the whole problem. That's the great tragedy.
But apart from traveling, you also wrote a book, actually 2 books about your travels.
Yeah, the first book I wrote is called Lebanese Nuns Don't Ski, which I wrote about a trip in 2001, which is probably like one of the highlights of certainly my traveling life. And basically, I was in a relationship before in the UK and my wife ran off with a hairy truck driver. And it was a little bit devastating at the time, and I didn't take it very well. And so I was drinking lots in the village where where we were living, and she'd moved out. And after about 2 months of this, a friend of mine said to me in the pub, he said, you can't keep doing this. What are you going to do with your life? And I said, you know what? I'm going to hitchhike to South Africa. And the whole pub just erupted in laughter. And he went to the toilet. And as he went to the toilet, I just thought, why not? And so when he came back, I said, yeah, today is the 24th of November 2000. 3 months from today, on the 24th of February 2001, I'm going to come to this pub when it opens at 11 o'clock. I'm going to have 2 beers, and at 11:37 exactly, I'm going to walk out with a half-size rucksack. I'm going to walk past my house, out of my village, out of my life, down to the motorway 5 kilometers away, and put a little sign out saying South Africa. And everybody laughed, but then for the next 3 months I did just that. And I made a rough itinerary going through the Balkans, through the Caucasus, through the Middle East, through East Africa.
So did you visit Croatia for the first time then?
I actually came very briefly in 1988 to Medjugorje because I was educated in a Catholic boarding school. And so I came to Zagreb for overnight, and then I went to Medjugorje because I'd heard about this amazing place I had to go as a Catholic boy. So, but apart from that, yeah, it was the first trip. And so then I made this trip, and I got in touch with all my former aid worker friends and asked if they knew anybody on the route, were they on the route? And, for example, a girl I knew in Tajikistan, she was now working in Albania. So we traveled together for 2 weeks. And it was just 9 months, amazing trip. And so at the end of it, I put together a book, which is now on Amazon. It's a great read.
Everyone can find it. Lebanese Nuns Don't Ski, author Paul Bradbury. Can you tell us a story or two from that trip?
Yeah, so I basically I hitchhiked from this motorway, and literally like 2 months ago I posted on Facebook because it was a 20-year anniversary, and I just said, for all you people who are stuck in your lives and you think there's no hope, there's no way to change things, this is what I did 20 years ago. And I literally just left everything behind and started again. I had about $11,000 in savings. And I just went, and it was the most liberating feeling of my life, I have to say. And within a year of doing that, I was working in northern Somalia as an aid worker. And within 18 months, I bought a house on a Dalmatian island I still can't pronounce. And I'd met an amazing girl in the library in Jelsa, Miranda, now my wife, got 2 kids now. And it was a complete life-changing experience, both in the travel and in the way that I could make a new start. But on the actual trip itself, it was incredible because, again, I was very naive. And I didn't really understand the war in Yugoslavia because at the time I was an aid worker in Rwanda, and I was a student, and I wasn't really following it. And so when I came to Sarajevo, I became fascinated that this could have happened. And so then I went on this huge sort of mission to try and understand the whole thing. So I ended up going to Pale, and I hung out with some people from Pale just to find out what the Serbian perspective was. I went down to Albania. I was in Kosovo. Went up to Serbia as well. And so I tried to sort of see it from lots and lots of different perspectives. I went to Bulgaria, where 10 years before I'd been working as a volunteer teacher in this small town called Pričali, and I went back to the old school to go and teach, and some people still remembered me from there. That was amazing. And then I went into Georgia. I spent two months in Georgia. I almost got arrested for allegedly stealing the samovar that belonged to Stalin from his museum. And then we went down to Armenia, and I ended up walking across the border from Armenia to Iran. And there's this amazing village called Megri, which is the most southern village in Armenia, and it's full of vodka and it's full of green and everything. All these Iranians come on the day trips and they just drink, and then they just then they go back and they cross the bridge, and they it's just desert the other side. And I was supposed to go with a friend of mine again, and he was refused entry, and so I ended up walking to Iran on my own, and that was an amazing 15 days. And then I went into Dubai, and then I across to Jordan, to Lebanon, and into Israel and the West Bank, where I found myself in the middle of a gun battle between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And then we had the flight to, I didn't hitchhike, obviously, all the way. And then we had the flight to Eritrea, where was this plane crash. So it was a Boeing 727, Air Yemenia. And we came into land, and I was looking out the window going, Africa, the green of Africa. It was so nice to be back. And I just thought the approach was all wrong. And we hit the runway sort of really sort of at a bad angle, and we just kept going, and we weren't slowing down. And there was one other Western guy on the plane, a guy from Denmark, and we just looked at each other, going, "This is it." And finally, the plane came to a halt about 50 meters past the runway, and it was at a 30-degree angle, and the wing had snapped into 2 pieces. And the oxygen masks do come down automatically, so that's good news. Mm-hmm. And then everybody was just like laughing and just getting up on this angle and just taking their luggage from the overhead lockers. And then somebody said in Tigrinya, the local language, benzine. And then we could all smell something. Mm-hmm. And so then it was down the emergency exits and then running away, but it was okay. So that was my entry to Africa this time.
And your final destination was South Africa?
Yeah, so because I became so obsessed with the Balkans, I was supposed to spend about a week, and I spent 7 weeks there, and then I spent much more time in Georgia than I planned. And I had a 9-month timeline because I had to be back in November in the UK for work. And so with Africa, I was rushing a little bit. And then when I got to Nairobi, I found a job working for the same aid organization. So I was in Somalia for 3 weeks as well. And then, so my end destination was actually Madagascar. I spent 2 weeks in Madagascar with a friend of mine. And then I went to Johannesburg and then flew back to London in November. I came back to my local bar in my village. And I'll never forget it because the same barmaid, I opened the door, she walked in, she looked at me, the same lovely smile, and she said, the usual, as though nothing had happened.
After 9 months.
And nothing had happened after 9 months. And I thought, wow, this was the life that I was condemning myself to. And now I've got 2 months of work here, and then I moved to Somalia, and then we'll see what happens. So it was totally life-changing.
And what did your friends in your local pub said about your trip?
It was a very short conversation. They were all, oh, great to have you back. What are you drinking? How was it? And then as soon as you start to explain how it was, their eyes just glaze over and they're not interested. They want to tell you about the local gossip in the village. And I realized that, when you travel and you have these experiences, it's very hard to share them with people who are back here because they just cannot comprehend. And it's not being derogatory. It's just it's a different kind of experience, I started talking about the things that happened in the village, and then I left quite soon afterwards and went to Somalia, and then came to Croatia and met Miranda, and here we are.
It sounds like a great trip, but it was 20 years ago. It was without internet. Now we have lots of gadgets to help us.
Yeah, I think, if I go back to the original travel around South America in 1988, I didn't take a camera with me. That's how naive I was about travel. But I have to say that the images of that trip to South America 30 years ago are still very much alive in my head, much more so than any trip I did last year when I've got my camera and posting on Facebook. So that's the first thing. And with this trip 20 years ago, we did have internet cafes, but they were very, very slow. But really, there was none of this gadgeting. There was no social media. It was literally, the Bible for travel then was the forum on Lonely Planet called Thorntree. And that was where I met other travelers. That's where I got advice about visas. And that was my lifeline for travel back then. And you'd meet the most obscure people in the most obscure parts of the world connecting through that. And there was none of this Instagram or Facebook or anything else. And so, I actually read the book a couple of years ago and I thought, wow, this was a real trip. This was real travel. And would that be possible today? I really don't think so, because there are a lot more people traveling today than there were 20 years ago for sure. And there are very, very few undiscovered places now, whereas some of the places I went to were very, very, very obscure back 20 years ago. So there was, now with the internet, you can plan, you can book accommodation, you can see what the stuff is. And, I would get off the bus not even knowing if I had anywhere to stay that night. And I like that. That was part of the experience. And so for me, travel back then was, part of it was seeing the amazing sight, like, the waterfall or the temple or whatever. But part of it was just the experience of actually managing to survive. I remember traveling around rural Eritrea in 46 degrees heat and very, very humid, and just, congratulating myself that I'd actually managed to find somewhere to stay and somewhere to eat and to find a beer in the evening and to find some companies, people to talk to, and these are the experiences that stay with me, much more so actually than the things I saw. It's the experiences, the people you meet. Yeah.
Your thoughts on Africa. Is it changing slower than the rest of the world?
I think Africa is definitely changing. I think it's changing slower in some parts, but the most incredible transformation of any country in the world, I think, is something that I saw, and it's in Rwanda. So Rwanda, in 1994, when I first went there, was just finished with a devastating genocide where 800,000 people had been killed in 100 days. That's 8,000 a day, every day for 100 days, in a population of 7.5 million. And they weren't, they weren't gassed to death. They weren't a machine gun to death. It was all machetes. It was brutal. And so I arrived 2 weeks after that finished, and I worked there for 9 months. And here was a country that was one of the poorest in the world, which had nothing really to offer apart from being beautiful, which had 2 tribes that hated each other and were killing each other. And yet we fast forward 25 years, and Rwanda is one of the top luxury tourism destinations in the world. We have luxury hotel chains in Rwanda that are not opening in Croatia. Mm-hmm. This is a country that is so backward that plastic bags are illegal. This is a country that's so backward that they deliver emergency blood.
And if I remember, they banned plastic bags like 10 years ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And now they deliver emergency blood by drone anywhere in the country within 30 minutes. This is a country that, has managed to heal itself from this devastating. Every Saturday, the citizens get out there and they work and they keep the place clean. It's the cleanest country in the world, I think, or certainly in Africa. And of course, there's It's not 100% democratic, I understand that, but when you have that kind of ethnic division, to come to where Rwanda's come today is incredible. And, we talk about Modric and the World Cup. Rwanda is a country with no football history whatsoever, never been to the World Cup, never had a Premier League footballer play at all. And they have a sponsorship deal with Arsenal Football Club. They're the first tourism country to partner with the Premier League. And they have a £30 million deal over 4 years, I think it is. And, their logo gets seen 35 million times a day. And Arsenal is very, very involved in developing tourism in Rwanda as a result. And, we look at Croatia won the world, was in the World Cup final, with the land of Modric, the hearts and minds, everyone's for Croatia. And what are we doing with it? Absolutely nothing. So I think some countries are developing slowly, but I think Rwanda is a really good example of how you can come from total disaster to a really prosperous future.
You also spent some time in Somalia like 20 years ago. How it was then in Somalia and how it is now?
Well, I think Somalia,
it's very complicated.
Yeah. So first of all, everybody thinks that Somalia is this war zone, and it's everyone's killing each other and so on. And there's actually three parts to Somalia. There's Somalia itself, and then which used to be Italian Somaliland, and they have a breakaway republic called Puntland up in the east. And then you have the self-proclaimed independent state of Somaliland, which used to be British Somaliland way back when. Mm-hmm. And, I was mostly in Somaliland, and then I went to Puntland. I can honestly say I've never been to anywhere in the world safer than Somaliland. I mean, unbelievable. And this country, because of UN sanctions, because they weren't recognised internationally, they couldn't get aid or anything else. This country had a budget of like $5 million or something insane. But their diaspora started coming back and building, and they've actually built a really, really, really healthy, reasonably democratic society in incredibly difficult circumstances with incredibly difficult neighbours such as Somalia. And I have to say my hat's off to the people of Somaliland for what they've achieved. And it hasn't been easy, and it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I think everybody who goes there comes back and says how safe and how friendly it is, and despite all the pressures from Somalia as well. And then I went to Puntland, which is where the Somali pirates hang out. So this is their sort of and I wasn't allowed to go outside the compound without an armed guard. So I basically was in the compound, did my work, had an armed guard, went on field trips and everywhere, and it was just it was an incredible experience. But I was there 1 week with this beautiful Kenyan Somali girl called Muna, who was from the Nairobi office. And it was just us two in the office, apart from the local staff. So in the evening, just the two of us. And she was a beautiful, unmarried Somali girl, having to marry the girl from the right tribe. And we sort of talked, and she was very flirty. And one day she said, "I want to take you for a walk on the beach at sunset." And I was like, "Well, this sounds nice," I was a kind of a single guy. And so we went, and the beaches in northern Somalia are amazing. Mm-hmm. The sunsets are divine. And but we had to go with our armed guard with a Kalashnikov, a guy called Arafat. And so every evening for 5 days we'd go, and there'd be me and this beautiful girl all dressed up in her flowing robes and wonderful colours, amazing sunsets, and Arafat with the Kalashnikov. And then one day she said to me, "I'd really like to do something today." And I was like, "Sounds nice." And so she got Arafat with a big argument to stay in the car. And just the two of us went alone for this walk. And then she said, "I close your eyes." And then she took off her stuff and to show me her face and her hair and everything and how it looked. It was an amazingly powerful moment. But the people of Somalia are amazing. The hospitality, the friendliness, and their ability to survive is unbelievable. They really, really have nothing. And you see these nomadic tribes with their camels just going around in search of water. It was, and then funny story. I was a few years later. I was selling real estate in Yelsa on Hwar, mm-hmm. And this British guy, Mark, who's a good friend of mine, came to the island with his girlfriend, who was half Somali. Mm-hmm. And we were talking, and I said, I was in Somalia. And she said, whereabouts? Because not many Brits go to Somalia. Yeah. And I said, I was in Somaliland. And she's like, really? My father is an aid worker from Wales, and my mother is a warlord in one of the villages. And they met, and there's me. And so I started telling my stories, and I told her one story of the day that I went to this village, and it hadn't rained for 3 years. And I had big red hair at the time, and they had never seen a white guy before. And so I got out of the car, like with this red hair, everything. And then suddenly the clouds appeared and it started to rain.
Oh my God.
And so the rain god from Manchester had arrived in Somalia. And so I'm telling her the story and she goes, oh my God. I said, what? She goes, so it's true. I said, what do you mean? She goes,
she heard about it.
This is a village folklore in that there was this guy with mad hair came one day from Manchester and brought the rain, and then off he went back to and they wanted him to come back again. Yeah. So, but yeah, amazing. Like a year later in Yelsa, just to meet somebody who knew about that.
So please tell me, what is the connection? What is the link I'm missing between Paul working as a humanitarian in Somalia and Paul buying a house on Hvar?
Well, I was living in Hargeisa, and I was sharing a house with 8 African colleagues, including this lovely Kenyan girl, and they were from Uganda, from Ethiopia, from Sudan, and they were just an amazing group of people, and I was the only white guy or pink guy in the building. And every evening they would play their Scrabble and they'd do their things, and I would go with a gin and tonic to the rooftop. There was no alcohol allowed in Hargeisa, but every week we would import a printer on the UN plane, which would have 60 cans of beer in it, and we'd pay $5 to the guy. And so we would bring a printer in every week, and that's how we got alcohol. And it was that kind of primitive. And I finished my gin and tonic, and I just found out that the house we had from my previous relationship had sold. And so now I had money in the bank, and I was finally free to completely start again. And so I was thinking about where to buy a house, and I wanted to buy somewhere in Europe, but not the UK, somewhere close to the sea. And so I went downstairs to get another gin and tonic, and the African guys they were playing with their Scrabble, and then CNN was on the TV, and there was a reclama. Croatia, the Mediterranean as it once was. And that was it. I watched it 30 seconds and I said, let's go by there. So that's how I made my decision. And then I didn't know where to buy in Croatia, but because of this trip, when I was in Sarajevo, I stayed with this amazing Canadian girl, Kendra, and she was during the siege, during the war in Sarajevo, and then every weekend she would come for Odmor down to the coast. So she said, come to Sarajevo and I will tell you some places. My boyfriend and I will take you down to one of them one weekend, and let's see if we can find a house. So I went to Sarajevo, and we met for a beer and outside, and it's a beautiful town, as you know, and beautiful girls. And she gave me a piece of a pen and paper, and she started writing 10 places like Dubrovnik, the Pearl of the Adriatic, to Split, Diocletian's Palace. And I was just looking at these girls, and I stopped listening, and then I heard like 10, the island of Vis. And then she said, which one's the most interesting? And I felt so embarrassed that I hadn't been listening that I closed my eyes and I put my finger down on the paper. And number 6 was Hvar, which is still an island I can't pronounce properly. And also, I'd never heard of it. And she was like, are you sure it's an island? And I said, but it's beautiful, isn't it? Because it's on your list, and that was it. So we came down to Hvar, and then we left. It was Veligospa. So it was
15th of August.
15th of August, Spitzsaison. And so we left at 3:00 in the morning on the Friday from Sarajevo. We stopped in Jablanica for some Janet Dino, as you do. And then we got the first ferry from Drvenik to Sučuraj.
Okay.
And we had a coffee in Sučuraj, and Amko, her Bosnian boyfriend, was a typical Bosnian who didn't really speak. He just smoked cigarettes and that was it, Anyway, so we sat down and we had a coffee. He had an espresso, I had a beer. And he just said to me, "Poznaš šta? Pa moje mišljenje, najljepše mjesto na Hvaru to je Jelsa." And that was it. That was the end of the conversation. That was the longest conversation I ever had with him. And then he went back to his cigarettes and his coffee. And I said, okay, let's go and buy Jelsa. So then we drove from Pričali to Jelsa, and you talk about Vukojebina. Eastern Hvar, then I was just like, what is this? There's nobody here. Everything's abandoned. And then we came to Jelsa in Veligospa. It was the Italians with it. It was full. It was just full of life. It was really amazing. And there was one place for sale, so I ended up buying it.
And you also met your wife there one day when you went to library to get a children's book.
Yeah, because I work for MI6. My Russian was quite fluent, so I realised that I knew most of the Slavic grammar myself already. So if I just learned some conversation and some grammar, I think I could pick up Croatian. How wrong I was,
especially on Hvar.
Especially on Hvar, the dialect there. Yeah. And so I went to the library in Jelsa to borrow a children's book, and I opened the door, and there she was, the assistentica with Oči kao more, and so Miranda gave me a book called Dobar dan Tata, which is the first book I got for Croatian, and just to ask her out was not going to work, so I ended up moving to Japan, where I was working as an English teacher, and then one night after being out all night, just on the way to school, I was sitting in Peace Park where the bomb went off in Hiroshima, and I called her because it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I said that I really liked her, and would she be my girlfriend, and could she wait a few months before I got back? And she said yes, and that's it. And it's been a great decision. I'm very, very happy.
Thank you for sharing this. So we talked about your first book, but you also wrote another.
So the first book, Lebanese Nuns Don't Ski, actually came about because when I came to Vienna on this trip, on the first trip from the village pub, I wrote a big email to my friends explaining what had happened, and they really, really liked it. So they said, please write more. So when I got to Sarajevo, I did the same thing. And then I was staying with friends of friends on the trip all the way down. And so I was writing about the people I was staying with. So my next hosts they looked after me very well because they wanted to be featured nicely and so on. And they were great people. And when I got to the end of the trip, I realized that actually I had quite a good book, because I had about 500 people on the mailing list by that time, because lots of people had read it and said, keep me on the mailing list, or I'm a friend of so-and-so. So I came to Jelsa and I finished it, when I moved to Jelsa. And then the second book is really, it's a short book. I wrote it in 4 days, but it's a love story and a thank you to the island of Hvar, where I lived for 13 very happy years, and obviously met my wife and my kids grew up there, and amazing Punica, obviously. But just I realized that it was a very surreal life that I was living. So and so it might be a fun sort of read for people, for Croatians to learn about what it's like for a foreigner to live on there. So it's kind of 80 very, very short anecdotes taken through the story of an Englishman living for a decade on a Dalmatian island. So it describes how I bought the house, how I met my wife, how I realized that soon after buying it that Jelsa was not full of life 12 months a year. I actually thought it was like this all year round, with all the tourists. And then I saw the internet cafe have shorter hours. I saw this business closing for the season, and I used to go to one restaurant every single night. And when I went there in mid-October, it was closed. And the next day I asked him, I saw the waiter on the street. I said, when are you opening? And he said, in May. And I said, May? That's 7 months away. And I literally had no idea that this was just a seasonal tourist island. And so then I realized that I didn't have an address. So I wanted some mail to come because there's no street names. And so I went to the post office and I said, sorry, can you tell me what my address is, how to get mail to me? And I showed them my contract, and they looked at the contract and they laughed, and they said, did you buy the house of Pantagan? And I said, what's Pantagan? And they said, oh, how you say in English, a rat. And this was this guy's nickname. And I was like, I guess so. And they said, please don't tell me you paid the full price. And I said, maybe. And they said, this house has been for sale for 10 years. And so I went home, and are you going to live here during the winter?
In which part of Jelsa? Is Velabanda, Malabanda?
Banski Dolac, up in the old town. And they said, "Are you going to live here in winter?" And I said, "Well, yes." And they said, "But you know that there's no heating in the house?" And I said, "No." So I hadn't checked, because everything is still China in my life, and so then I realized, these are the sort of stuff that I write about. And then I started a property business, selling real estate to people, and I had the local.
So that was your first job in Croatia after moving. Okay.
Yeah. And I had the local mafia give me warnings just to step off because I was being too successful for them and things like that. So I write about this, and they weren't that scary, but it wasn't that pleasant. And it's just a book of 80 stories. It's called Lavender, Dormice, and a Donkey Named Mercedes, who was this amazing donkey living on the Paklenي Islands and stuff. And it's just a fun read, and people still buy it today as a holiday read and stuff. Yeah, so it was fun to write.
It's also available on Amazon.
Yeah, they're both available on Amazon. Yeah,
but not in paperback, just PDF.
No, but you can buy it on Amazon as a paperback and on a print view. And then I'm writing another book, which I promised myself I will finish this year, called Around the World in 80 Disasters.
Okay.
So this is like a collection of my travel stories from around the world and where I got it wrong.
For the moment, let's get back to Sarajevo and that piece of paper with 10 places in Croatia. All of them were on the coast?
All the ones that I heard, because I wasn't listening to all of them. But actually, I did then look, didn't I? And yeah, they were all on the coast, because that's the perception was that's what foreigners want. They want to be on the coast. I wanted to be by the sea, to be fair. So yeah.
But a few years ago, you moved to Varaždin.
We moved to Varaždin in 2016, and it's a completely different experience. And at the time, people were like telling me, why would you leave Hvar to go and live in Varaždin? It's cold up there, everything. And to be honest, I think now we have the best of both worlds, because if you live full time on an island like Hvar, yes, it's beautiful. But in the summer, you're so busy with the season that you have no time to enjoy it. And in the winter, nothing's open, so there's nothing to enjoy. And so, yes, you live in paradise, but it's not actually paradise, 12-month living. If you can spend some time on Hvar and combine it with somewhere else, it's the amazing lifestyle location. I have friends who live in Munich and they spend the summer on Hvar. Absolutely perfect. And so I found Varaždin to be a really, really great place to be, because I find the mentality up north is way more to my liking. People really work for a living here. People really appreciate things, and they don't have this dependency on tourism that it's just going to happen and there's money going to come every summer from renting, and they don't have to try that hard. We're also very close to Zagreb. Zagreb is a city that I used to hate. I think it's probably the best place to live in Croatia these days. It's got a very, very vibrant scene, and there's a lot happening there. And it's surprising, actually, if you actually look around, the number of foreigners who are living in continental Croatia is quite staggering how many there are. And they're all doing little things in little villages, and they've all found their perfect piece of heaven, away from the crowds, away from people. And, Croatia it's a very safe country. Very safe country. And I know diaspora from Australia who are coming.
And many Croatian people are not aware of that fact.
Absolutely not.
I also think it's one of the safest places in the world.
It absolutely is. And I know several Australian diaspora who've actually moved to Croatia to bring up their children because it's safer. Mm-hmm. We have the best lifestyle in Europe here. We have incredible, authentic experiences. Incredible stuff that, like dormice festivals, pumpkin festivals. These things that, the stuff that happens here is just amazing. And everywhere I go, and you'll know more than me because you travel, you know Croatia better than I do. But every region you go to, there's just an incredible experience to be had that doesn't necessarily get written about. And, people say I'm a great writer. I'm not. I'm just a person who's privileged to report on so many fantastic things in this country that nobody else writes about in English.
To what extent do you think the town of Varaždin and Varaždin County use their tourist potential?
If you look at Varaždin itself, it is one of the most beautiful towns in Europe, and I can see, an Advent in Vallejden, but make it that into a really, 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 attractive thing. I think it would be sensational. But the one town that I think, everybody laughs at me when I say this, but the one town in this region that I think is just absolutely incredible, which has so much potential. Potential is a terrible word. I hate potential because, as Matija Babic said, Switzerland has no potential. And Croatia has lots of potential. And the reason is because if there is potential in Switzerland, they realise the potential and it becomes something. And here we just talk about potential. But I'm fascinated, truly fascinated by the town of Ludbreg. Because I went there in 2016 as a guest of the Vallejden County Tourist Board. I was doing some work with them. And I'd never heard of it before. And we had this thing with the centre of the world, and that's what everybody knows about. Yeah. But then you go a little bit deeper, and they have this amazing restoration centre, one of the top places in Europe. They have the only certified miracle in Croatia, which you can physically see in a church and have Holy Mass there. If religious tourism is your thing, it's not my thing, but I know a million people go to Medjugorje every year, and there's nothing there, and there's nothing officially there because it's not been. Yeah. And then you have this amazing story of the three churches, of the one that was built in the park because when the Croatian government was in Vallejden in 1738, I think it was, and there was a plague, and the government said, "Dear God, if you stop this plague, we will build a church of thanks in Ludbreg."
Yeah, the parliament made the promise.
And there was in the Sabor there was a pechat and everything, so it must be true. And then they did nothing. The plague stopped, and then in the middle of the Homeland War in 1994, this church appeared. So 250 years later. But the potential of and I was there last week with the Minister of Culture for the opening of the new Jovia Archaeological Museum and Park, and it's a brilliant addition to tourism here. And the workshop space for kids is going to be fantastic. But the potential of this religious tourism, to me, we have all these tourists from Poland coming to Medjugorje, and they spend the night in Vallejden on the way down, just as a place to stop. And none of them know that 20 kilometres away, there's actually an amazing religious experience that should be part of their trip, and wine roads and everything else around it. And so I'm now working with a Polish tour guide, Sabina, who's translating our website into Polish. And she's been up there and she's getting the training to be a Vallejden County tour guide. And we're now talking to Polish tour agencies about bringing Polish tourists to Ludbreg to have Holy Mass in the presence of a miracle in Polish with their Polish priest. And this is just a simple thing that we can do. And so,
just to explain who is not familiar, in Ludbreg you can see the chalice with the blood of Christ.
Yeah, so it happened in 1411. The priest in the private chapel of the Baron said he wasn't sure about this blood to wine whole thing, and then it just turned into blood, and he hid it in the wall for many years. And on his deathbed, he told somebody about it. And then it went down to Rome, and in 1535, it was certified as an official miracle. It was taken through the streets of Rome, and now it's back in Ludbreg.
I also think, and you would probably agree, that Jelsa and Procesija za Križem also has a big potential, which is not used even close.
If you look at religious tourism, and if you look at what Croatia has in terms of those experiences, the one in Sin, on Veligospa, you have Zakrižen, you have in Ludbreg on the first week of September, you have 100,000 pilgrims coming. If you could make Mary Bistrica, all these things, Torsat, if you make a map of these things and you come up with a strategy, this is a huge, huge, huge thing, which is not for everybody. But niche tourism is where the future is. And these are people that will spend money. These are people that will come out of the season. These are people that will come to places that are not on the coast. This is a massive network. And these are people from Catholic countries close by, such as Germany, such as Italy, such as Austria, such as Poland.
Also Poland, yes.
This is a huge... So what I would do is I'd fund a religious exhibition centre in Ludbreg, which is the de facto capital of religious tourism because it has the miracle. And you bring people in for that experience, and then you would show them everything else that there is, and then you develop a network there. And to me, it's clear as day. I went to see the Kingdom of Accidental Tourism to present this idea, and I met two of the most senior people in HTZ, one of whom I respect a lot, and the other one, she had no idea that Ludbreg had a miracle.
Many people don't.
Yeah, but if you're the senior people in the National Tourist Board, you think you may have a clue what the country has to offer, but anyway.
Did at least the local tourist boards recognize the opportunity in Paul Bradbury moving to this area?
Well, as I say, the reason I moved here was because of the Varaždin County Tourist Board, because Elisabetta Dolenec was the director at the time. And I think, she did an excellent job. And she really showed me everything around here. And have I been approached? No. Apart from Ludbreg, actually. The tourist board and the city, the town, contacted me, and I went to see them, and I met with the mayor, and they said that we know we have potential, but we don't have the skills to develop that potential. So I've been working with them now for some time. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite projects in Croatia because it's so out of the box. It's not classic sun tourism and stuff. So I really like that. I'm very open to work with anybody. I have this reputation because I criticise the Croatian National Tourist Board that it's a problem. But actually, we have outstanding cooperation with the city of Dubrovnik and the Dubrovnik Tourist Board. I met with Mato Frankovic, the mayor, and I've been working with the Dubrovnik Tourist Board now for 8 months on digital nomad projects. We currently have the world's first digital nomad in residence project, which is ongoing, finishes this week. And the stuff that is coming out of those workshops will completely reshape the tourism focus for Dubrovnik. It's fantastic. Next month, we start a partnership with Saltwater Nomads and with the Zagreb Tourist Board. We have Zagreb Digital Nomad Week starting. And
read about it.
This will be something that, because what people here don't understand, and it's not their fault. I mean, I'm new to it. Is that the future of work is going to be completely different, and people will be a lot freer to go to different places. And so, rather than saying Croatia full of life, which means nothing, we should reorientate our focus on Croatia, your safe, authentic lifestyle destination. And if this is a great place to be and to chill, and you can work, then why wouldn't you come here? Why wouldn't you, when you leave the office, go for a walk down Stradun and have a cocktail and watch a Dubrovnik sunset? And then at the weekend, go hiking on Miljet or go wine tasting on Pelishat, or have some oysters on Ston, or to go to Korčula and have a month in Dubrovnik.
You also need to mention something about some places in continental part.
Yeah.
They are also really nice places.
Oh, they're fantastic. And one of the places which actually, one of my, because I interview lots of nomads, and they're all over Croatia. And one of my favorite was this American woman from Denver, and she lives in Osijek. And she said Osijek, as a single woman, is one of the safest places. It's safety. English is well spoken. Connectivity is great. Authentic experiences are fantastic. Nature is incredible. Local people, hospitable. All these things that, we take for granted here. And people here see this. I as a foreigner, see this. Let me tell you a story about how a friend of mine who runs a luxury tourism business in Dalmatia, he took a group of people from New York to an olive grove for olive tasting and then lunch. And during the lunch, this Jewish guy from New York got up and he walked, and there was a lemon tree. And he asked if he could pick one of the lemons. And the guy said, of course you can, I can take it with no problem. And at the end of the tour, he said that was the most amazing experience of his trip, because I've never seen a lemon tree before. I've never been able to pick a fresh lemon because it all comes in the supermarket. And my friend realized that he could charge really good prices to give really good, authentic experiences, which cost nothing. And continental Croatia, even more so than the coast, has those kind of experiences coming out of the OPGs you have here. The wine story. It's phenomenal. And then you go to places like, you have the lace in Lepoglava. You have the wellness in Varaždinska Toplica. You've got so much stuff here. and the religious tourism. You've got all the sporting stuff you could do here. There's a really good project called Run Croatia, run by Bero and Eva, and they're bringing healthy tourism into Croatia. They're organising more because you with marathons you get lots of people coming in, and they're developing a network of races around. These are the sort of things. It's healthy, active lifestyle.
I also think that Lepoglava has a great potential.
I have a really crazy tourism idea for Lepoglava.
Share it if you want.
So, as you probably know, it's the only place in Croatia which has an active volcano.
Yes, Gaveznica.
Yeah, which was 22 million years ago, I think. And
yes, exactly.
They used to have some kind of exhibit there, but it's kind of now gone. But if you look at it, it's all grass, and it's a perfect size and setting for a futsal, five-a-side football pitch.
Mm-hmm. I've been there. I know what you're talking about.
So what I would do is I would create, because you have the craziest football pitches in the world. You have the one in Imotsko is always mentioned, for example.
Did you approach someone from Lepoglava for that?
I wrote a story about it, but
okay.
But it'd be more of a national level thing. This, but what I would do is because I don't know how many volcano museums there are in the world, but the geological stuff that's there, the stones, are really interesting.
Yeah, they have a Ahat stone.
Yeah. But my idea would be that we would create a football pitch, and then we would have an international tournament between countries that have volcanoes, active volcanoes, and they all come, and we make this into some kind of event with some kind of exhibition centre on volcanoes, and it'll be quite quirky. But you'll get people that would want to come and see it and take part and have a game, and then you'd have a local guy, team of 5 that would play anybody that wanted to come and play. And I think it'd be one of those things that would be really kind of interesting, and it would have some offshoot tourism.
I can see the connection with the volcano, fire, and Vatreni.
Yeah, so, there we go. Yeah. But these are just ideas. But I think one of the things now that I'm working more with private tourism businesses, I can see. I market myself as a foreign eye with local knowledge. So I kind of understand what foreigners are looking for, and I understand how things work here. But I also see the potential of certain things such as co-working spaces within hotels. Mm-hmm. If we can develop that, if we can have parts of hotels that actually are co-working spaces, and we can work together to bring that experience to people that stay in hotels. So I'm now working with the Hilton Hotel in Zagreb, and we're going to have part of our conference will be there, and then we're going to have part of our co-working stuff there, and together we'll turn it into the digital nomad capital of Zagreb. This is where all the fun events will be happening and so on like that. I also see a lot of people here who are doing amazing stuff on their own. They're trying to get official recognition, but it's not coming. And one of the most exciting projects I'm working on now is there's a very interesting young lady called Teodora who is in Zagreb, and she is the #1 authority on Korean tourism to Croatia. She's bilingual. She taught herself Korean. She's been to Korea. And she worked with Uniline to develop the tourism market there. She worked with the National Tourist Board when they opened their office in Seoul. But she's basically been left aside. And I see phenomenal potential with her. If I just listen to her and say, tell us what it is that Korean tourists want, and then let me connect you with the people that can deliver that. And then we can completely bypass the system and deliver an outstanding tourism product. And those are the experiences that I'm interested in developing.
So after moving to Croatia in 2000
I bought the house 2002. I moved full-time in 2003.
Okay. So your first job in Croatia was in real estate.
Yeah, so I moved here and I was looking for something to do. I was going to open a language school initially, and then I saw the real estate opportunity. So I started my own business, and I got quite stuck quite quickly because I had a lawyer who had this wonderful phrase, nema problema, and sve čisti jedan kroz jedan. These were the 3 phrases that he had. And then he had a 4th phrase I learned, which is I've only ever heard lawyers use in certain situations, and the situation is very specific. the situation is when he's promised something is jeden nema problema, and then there is a problem. He has this one phrase. It's beautiful. It's called imao problemčić.
Diminutive, yeah.
And I've never heard problemčić.
It's actually a big problem there.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I'm still 17 years later dealing with some of those problemčićes. But then, I started my own business with real estate, and that's how I started. And I was living on Hvar, and then we had had our first child, second child, and then the crash happened. And it was, how do I feed the family? What do I do and stuff? And I didn't really speak good enough Croatian, and so I started writing online because I've never been a trained writer or never been a journalist, but I know I'm quite good with words.
But you wrote 2 books.
But I wrote 2 books and 2 guidebooks, yeah, and 50,000 blogs. But I started writing for this portal in Canada. And then Google hammered them one day with the algorithm update. And so then I started my own blog. I realized that on Hvar, there were 5 tourist boards on Jelsa, Vraboska, Starigrad, Sučuraj, and Hvar town, and they didn't speak to each other. And so I thought if I could do one blog for the whole island and call it Total Hvar, maybe they would give me some money to do that. Maybe I could make some money from businesses, from commissions. And so I went to the tourist boards and they told me that it was a brilliant idea. I had their full support. So when I said, how much money does that mean? And they said, no, we said full support, not financial support. And that was one of my first lessons about doing business in Croatia. So, and then I did, Total Split, and then we Total in Dalmatia, and we did Dubrovnik and Korčula, and in 2015 I started Total Croatian News because I realized that even though we were in the European Union, we didn't have an English language news portal for Croatia, so I started it, and it's been incredibly successful, and we've done a lot of good things. I think we've been in the international media a lot. Last year we brought ABC News to Dubrovnik. They did 6 stories on ABC News, including Good Morning America for 12.5 million people. I brought the New York Times to Hvar and things like that. And it's a fun project, and I have a great team. We now have. I'm not running Total Croatian News anymore. It's been taken over by my team, and we've got some great interns coming. We're bringing some people back from the diaspora, and we're doing some really, really interesting stuff. I'm really proud of it.
But you also have a new project, Total Croatia.
Yeah, I realised that as much as Total Croatian News is fun, it doesn't really pay very well, especially if you're criticising the institutions of the country. And I've learned a lot about the Croatian media and the way things work in this country since I became more vocal in my criticism. And so I realised that when I got these 2 lawsuits from the National Tourist Board, that it finally motivated me to finish a project that I'd started a couple of years ago, and my wife Miranda encouraged me to finish it. And we decided to, rather than try and work with tourist boards or the National Tourist Board, why don't we just do what they should be doing and do it much better and do it in a commercial way, so that we can give really good information to tourists in their language, and we can work with the best private businesses, and we can develop our own ideas privately, such as this Korean idea I've just talked about, such as religious tourism in Ludbreg I've just talked about, and take it forward. So I started, it's called total-croatia.com. We had a press conference last week in Dubrovnik with Krešo Matson was there with me at Lazaretti. Mm-hmm. And so far the response from private businesses has been amazing. We've got agreed partnership deals with the Hilton for Zagreb, Falkensteiner Punta Scala for Zadar, Sunčani Hvar and Hvar, Sungard Dubrovnik and Dubrovnik. Almost there with Valamar, and several other big names are coming on board, and it's great, because suddenly you're working with the private sector, with everybody who has a really good interest in developing tourism and earning some money and doing a great job. And we're also working with small, local, authentic tourism providers as well. And we're doing it in different languages. We're already ranking really, really well in Norwegian, in German, in Spanish, and Polish. And I think it's got the potential to become the most important tourism portal in Croatia.
It's like one-stop point for anything you want to know about Croatia.
Yeah. So for example,
from COVID to currency.
So
everything.
it basically answers the questions that tourists are asking in their language. So how do you get from Split to Dubrovnik via Neum? Can you use euros in Croatia? Where can I buy Croatian olive oil online? What's the best wine to try when I'm on holiday? Can I take pets on the catamaran to Hvar? Can I smoke on the ferry? These are things practical stuff that people want to know. And we've done the website in such a way that that it answers these questions, and it's been built superbly. And we're just killing it on Google search. Killing it. We have very, very practical guides on how to cross the border from Slovenia to Croatia, from Bosnia to Croatia. We're number one on Google for that already. So yeah, it's a great project, and I've got a great team, and the feedback we've had from people has been unbelievable. And apart from our most popular article is our daily travel update, and within 48 hours of publishing it, we were getting 1,200 Google searches a day just on that article.
COVID related?
Yeah. And our most popular article apart from that is I wrote a really long piece about living in Croatia, the realities as a foreigner after 18 years, the good, the bad and the ugly, with the message that it's not perfect, but come. And we had that translated into Polish, and within a week we'd had 10,000 Polish people who had read the Polish version, because people want the information, and if people get the information, they'll come. And if you don't give them the information, they won't come. It's that simple.
Exactly. And especially now, I think the coronavirus crisis will make it faster so for many people to become digital nomads.
It will. And then I go back to that slogan. Croatia, your safe, authentic lifestyle destination. Those are the three messages we need to hammer home again and again and again. This is a safe country, great lifestyle, and there's lots of incredible authentic stuff to do. Why aren't you here?
You mentioned Polish, of course it's in English, but how many languages?
So we have we're still translating because obviously it takes time, but all the main pages will be in English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese for the Brazilian market mostly, Dutch, Norwegian, Polish, Slovakian, Slovenian, Czech, Hungarian, Russian, Ukrainian, Korean, Japanese, and both versions of Chinese.
Perfect. So actually it will be a net of very useful articles, and they're already ranking good on Google because no one ever wrote about it.
It's partly that, but it's also, if you look in Croatian on Od Splita do Dubrovnika, we're number 3 on Google in Croatian. For example, we translated my Living in Croatia article into Norwegian 2 days ago. And this morning on Google Norway, we're number 2 for living in Croatia in Norwegian. So, we're doing really, really well. And one of the things that I've learned is that I've always focused on the English language market, thinking that was Croatian tourism. And the English language market is maybe 10% of Croatian tourism. And so if you can reach those other languages as well, you're going to get so much more value for your advertisers.
Was it expensive project to do that?
My total budget was €5,000 in terms of investment.
But it's already making some money.
Yeah, so I invested €5,000. I had a way of working with my translators, and we've already earned enough money to pay them and to cover the ongoing costs. So it'll be a total investment of €5,000, yeah.
Let's talk about Croatian hospitality. How would you rank it?
I would say that Croatian hospitality at its finest is among the best hospitality in the world. I would say Croatian hospitality can be amongst the worst experiences. And there's a big difference, because we've had a culture here of the tourists will just come. And we've had this massive explosion of private accommodation, and people now, rather than working, they're just taking, converting apartments and renting. And there's just this assumption that, yes, maybe I can renovate the bathroom, put new kitchen in, or not, because the tourists will just come. And so there has been a culture, I think, of fairly average customer service, because the famous thing is send the money, just don't come. And this is one of the things that's famous about Croatian tourism. Having said that, I think there is a growing trend of really outstanding tourism providers in this country who get that things are changing and that money is not just guaranteed, and they also want to give excellent service. And these are the people offering the authentic experiences, going the extra for customers. And if tourists find those places, they're going to totally fall in love with Croatia and want to come back to those places. And I think that is on the rise. I think that's really, really encouraging. One of the things I want to do with my website, totalcroatia.com, is to work with those people so that we can give not only the best information, but we can direct them to the best tourism experiences. So, to me, Croatians are a fascinating nation. I think if I was in a war situation or in real conflict or an earthquake, I don't think I could find anybody better in the world to be next to me to help me out, because in adversity, Croatians are incredible. As soon as you have peacetime, all you do is argue. It's an incredible contrast between the two, and there's conspiracy theories, and there's all. It's to me, from a sociological point of view, just watching the Croatian society is unbelievable.
And most of those argues are about past wars.
It's about the past. It's about property. It's about stuff, and at the end of the DC Bio, there is prvi. This is I was in the Soviet Union undercover for MI6. Okay, so So all these people are just it's just insane, And then again, I don't want to compare Croatia to Rwanda, and I know that Rwanda had a healing process which hasn't happened here, and that's a huge difference. But man, this is one of the poorest countries in the world. They lost 12% of their population in 100 days, and they're now banning plastic bags and delivering blood by drone, and the IT hub of Central Africa, and one of the top luxury tourism destinations in the world, working with the Premier League. And is it so hard?
In past almost 20 years living in Croatia, what disappoints you the most and what delights you?
I suppose disappointment, my lawyer, when I was in the real estate business, because we invested a lot when I first came here in the property boom, and with this guarantee that all the properties were čisti papiri, jedan kroz jedan, nema problema, and that has caused me untold problems. I find Croatian people to be, especially on the island, it was very hard initially, because everybody suspects I'm a spy, and perhaps I am. But whatever I do as a Brit, it has an ulterior motive, and obviously I'm a millionaire, so whatever I do, and I laugh because I gave an interview for Leader, which is coming out this week, and they said, how much money did you invest in total? And I had €100 in my bank account when I started, and people just assume because you're foreign you're rich, and I have to work for a living, I have to pay my taxes, I have to all this stuff like that, I do, and I have to pay the salaries of the staff that come and work with me, and so there's this just complete assumption, just because you're foreign, somehow life is easier for here. And people are also very suspicious here. Why, when everybody's emigrating, are you moving here? All the migrants that came from Syria bypassed Croatia, they went somewhere else, and yet you chose to come from Manchester to come here. Why? And the reason is because it's an amazing place to live, and you just have to change your mindset and accept and see the things. See that taking a lemon off a tree is an incredible experience that most people don't have, that you have on a daily basis. Appreciate those things, appreciate the safety, appreciate the authentic experiences, appreciate the lifestyle. Yes, it's hard. Yes, if you want to make it in Croatia, you have to work really hard. But also, you look at, there was a really interesting thing a few years ago. There was a working committee on Croatown about extending the season, and they brought these professors down from Zagreb, and there was a big public meeting, and the first question was, do you guys want to extend the season? And half of the people said, no, we work for 6 months, you make good money, and that's it. But then the Americans who were paying these high prices and coming here for that experience, they're working 50 weeks for that 2-week experience. And so it's a super interesting mindset thing. There is amazing opportunity in Croatia, amazing opportunity.
Potential, big potential.
It's not. It's being realised. I mean, you look at Remats, and he's obviously the god of achieving these things.
Yeah.
But there are so many young kids starting their own business, and nobody mentions it because a Croatian can forgive you everything except success. So these people want to keep below the radar, and if we start telling those stories of success and achievement, maybe there won't be so much negativity in this country. Maybe people think there's a chance. This whole digital nomad revolution is fantastic because not only will it bring money to the economy, it'll bring new ideas to the mindset. And the local kids will think, if these guys are coming from Silicon Valley to live in Croatia, maybe things aren't that bad here after all. And what can I learn from them? I'm taking my 12-year-old daughter down to Dubrovnik this week for the end of the digital nomad thing, because she was there a few weeks ago. She was really inspired just to meet these really interesting people and to learn. You could see her mind opening up. And the more we expose our children here to that in Croatia, the better it will be for the future.
What are the biggest differences here in Croatia if you compare it with your homeland?
I think here, I call it a default negative mindset. Every piece of potential good news or happiness or everything is done with you're attacked or you're criticized. For example, here's a stupid example, but yesterday on Facebook, I put a post saying, can we co-create an article for Total Croatia? I want to get the 5 most famous footballers, actors, politicians, inventors, blah, blah, a list of 12 things. Can people just, give me their suggestions and maybe there've been some names I haven't heard of, blah, blah, blah. And the first comment was, why are there no artists on this? It wasn't, this is a good idea. Let's immediately attack this idea, and this is, I've never been to a country like Croatia that does that. And I also have never been to a country where people love to complain, but they won't do anything. It's as though complaining in the cafe that's all that's needed, and then they vent their frustration and then they'll go and vote for HDZ again.
Yes, and we are also full of social media warriors.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love it, and I get so much abuse on social media, and I actually quite like it now. And if I don't get it, I'm kind of, feeling like I haven't really done my job today. So, but it's amazing how much time and how much hatred people have here, just to vent on social media. And what I said was, if these Croatian keyboard warriors, for every negative comment that they made on social media, they made a commitment to pick up a piece of trash on a Croatian beach, we would have the cleanest beaches in Europe within a week. So it's great to complain, but do it in a constructive way, which is what we do with tourism.
Can you imagine in some parallel universe a situation, for example, where Nikola Tesla was born in a village near Manchester during a huge thunderstorm?
Well, obviously he would have played for Manchester United and scored the winning goal in the Champions League. Smiljan Tesla is just unbelievable because, here we have a global icon, a global symbol. And was he Serbian, was he Croatian? He was born in what is now Croatia, and is of ethnic Serbian origin. He was as equally proud of his Serbian and Croatian heritage. He's on record as saying that.
Yeah.
He went to Serbia for one night in his life. They named an airport after him. They've given National Science Day based on his birthday, I think it is, and they've done all this. And they've done a fantastic job. We have. It's almost like we're embarrassed about Tesla, and now we have Remats, we have Tesla, we have 10% of our country's national parks and nature parks. We have a beautiful, beautiful coastline. We have this amazing, authentic, safe lifestyle destination plus the parks, plus the Tesla, plus the green stuff, plus remats. It's just an unbelievable branding opportunity. And, Tesla is a global name. Did you know that Elon Musk's mum was on the Nikola Tesla electric car rally 5 years ago?
I think I read the article you mentioned.
Probably I read, yeah. But, here was Elon Musk's mum driving a Tesla around the land of Tesla, and nobody noticed. What I would do with Tesla, because if you look at, there's going to be like 21 million electric cars in Europe by the 2030, so it's a projection. I would build a temple of Tesla at Smiljan. I would make it the Old Trafford or the Bernabeu place to come, and I would have a visitor centre. I would have an education centre, because this is a unique thing that we have. We have the birthplace of this whole movement is here, and people will come. 75% or 80% of tourists in Croatia come by car, and an increasing number are going to come by electric car. And the mentality of those people is going to be electric. And if we can create an amazing Tesla, come to the birthplace of Tesla and have this amazing Tesla experience, it could be huge. But what do we have? We have like a small museum. We have a little charger which was donated, and then the local council didn't pay the upkeep, as far as I'm and that's it. And it's embarrassing. After
moving to Croatia, actually you didn't travel a lot, and then 2 years ago you went to Malaysia.
Yeah, it was a real surprise. I mean, I travelled, but to countries I'd already been to, and a lot of travel in Albania and Bosnia and Montenegro. But then I won an award in Malaysia from the Medical Travel Council of Malaysia.
Council of Spies,
there we go. And we had the opportunity to, this was for promoting medical tourism, and we had the opportunity, Miranda and I, to fly to Kuala Lumpur. And we had 5 days hospitality with them. They really looked after us. We flew out to the islands and stuff. And it was fantastic. And then this year I was named the International Medical Travel Journalist of the Year in Malaysia again, which was a big surprise, big honour. But this is a huge area of potential. Again, that word for Croatia. The medical tourism industry is massive globally, and we have outstanding excellence. I was in Berlin with Ognjen Bagatin a couple of years ago when he was named, Bagatin Clinic was named the Cosmetic Surgery International Clinic of the Year by the International Medical Travel Journal. And now we have Ryanair flights coming into Zagreb. We finally have the opportunity to compete with places like Budapest, which is a $600 million a year dental tourism industry. So these are things that we can now start to develop if we have a strategy. But in order to have a strategy, we need to have, blah, blah, blah. So
I think the biggest problem on many levels in Croatia is we don't have a strategy.
There's zero. And it's interesting that if you because I write a lot about medical tourism, which is why I won the award. I go to conferences and I speak to international experts, and I ask them about the brand of Croatia and the potential of Croatia. And the potential of Croatia is we can be in the top 10 medical tourism countries in the world within 10 years if we do the right strategy. If you look at Malaysia, 12 years ago, it was a $0 industry. Just before the pandemic, it was a $2 billion industry, because they have this public-private partnership, and they have a hashtag, Together We Win. The CEO of Malaysia Healthcare Travel Council at the time, Sherry Nazli, she spoke at a health conference in Srikvenica, which is when I first came across the Malaysians. She had the Croatians in tears, because she showed how simply, working together with the public-private partnership, they could do this. And she sees so much potential in Croatia, but no partnership, no strategy, nothing. And so if you ask people in the global medical tourism industry about Croatian healthcare tourism, they will say three names they'll mention. Bagatin Clinic, because of everything that Ognjen Bagatin has done, Kvarner Healthcare, and St. Catherine's Specialty Hospital. And we have so much more than that. But nowhere will you hear about the brand of Croatian medical tourism. And it's outrageous.
I think many people in Croatia have a wrong perspective of how much people from other countries know about Croatia. But actually, people who don't travel a lot or who don't travel so often, they don't have a slightest idea where Croatia is. And not just people from China or United States, also many people from England, from Spain, or even Germany, they don't have any clue where is Croatia and is there still war here.
If you look at Google Trends, after the World Cup final in 2018, one of the most searched terms was, where is Croatia? And now you have tourists, but then you also have tourists now coming to Dubrovnik, and you point out that 30 years ago, this was shelled. This was UNESCO. It was shelled by the Serbs, and they just can't believe it. And so there's, I would say the brand of Dubrovnik is probably bigger than the brand of Croatia globally.
For sure.
And especially after King's Landing and so on.
Yeah.
And we have a huge amount of work to do to actually get that brand out. And I think
there is a gap between familiarizing people.
Massive. Yeah. And I also think that, a lot of Croatian people aren't that aware of their own country outside the famous places, the number of Croatians that actually know that Ludbreg is the only certified miracle is, for a Catholic country, I was actually quite shocked. But, we just done a huge article on Knin, which is not a traditional tourist destination, but it should be. But we also translated that into Croatian because I think Croatian people will read it and learn something, And, the number of people that have never been to Slavonia is really surprising to me. I know people don't have money to travel like say, I did in the UK. But, the number of people that talk about Vukovar and, on November the 18th, everybody's Facebook thing changes. But they don't actually go to Vukovar and actually pay their respects that way. I find that quite strange. And 2 years ago, we had Dani Hrvatskog turizma, Days of Croatian Tourism, because of Goran Richel from Higher Tourism.
In Slavonia, yes.
It was in Slavonia. And the number of Croatia's tourism professionals that had never been to Slavonia and who were pleasantly surprised by how great it was stunning. And then you think, if these are the guys presenting Croatia to the world and they have no idea what they have, then how is the world going to know?
Actually, for many people, anything eastern than Zagreb is Slavonia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you ask people in Croatia, like, where is Slavonia? What does it constitute? You'll get 300 different answers because nobody's quite sure.
What was the most embarrassing moment that happened to you in Croatia, but also during your travels?
In my life, it was the summer of 1992 in St. Petersburg in Russia. I was living in an apartment with a very lovely Scottish girl, Fiona, and we were not together, which was my great regret.
Her choice.
Her choice, let's say. And it was a Sunday morning and I was working in bed on my computer and I had no clothes on. And the telephone rang and her friend Steve had just come on the train from Odessa in Crimea and wanted us to collect him from the train station. And I had loads of work to do. It was a Sunday. And I said, and I had the car. And I said, okay, I'll come and collect him. We'll go together. But I'm not going to get dressed. I'm just going to go and then come back. And then you can go off to the cafe and I'll stay and work. And so I put my bathrobe on. Now, I have to explain that my bathrobe was a gift from my mother when I was 13 at the boarding school, the internat, where I was educated by Jesuits. And when I was 13, it fitted me quite nicely. But when I was 22, it was a little bit short. But anyway, so I got into, it covered the essentials just. And so I got into the car and we drove to the train station. And just before the train station, there was a no left turn. And the train station was just there. And so I went round to look for another way and I came back to the same place. And in front of me was a taxi. And the taxi turned left. And I said, then if the taxi can, so can I. So I turned left. And there was a policeman. And the taxi drove past. And I got stopped. And Fiona said, sorry, officer, nothing to do with me. I'm in the passenger seat. Can I go to the train station? My friend's waiting. off you go. So I was there with this 13-year-old bathrobe, and he asked me for my papers. And of course, I didn't have any papers. So then he told me to come to the police station. And I tried to explain that I was in my bathrobe that my mother had given me 9 years ago. And he didn't care. So I said, I can do this. So I came out and I went to the police station, past the prostitutes and the drug dealers and everything else. And everyone was just staring at me. And he told me it was like a 200 ruble fine, which was about $3. And I said, I left my wallet at home. And he said, well, does your girlfriend have any money? And I said, well, she's not my girlfriend. But and he said, well, I said, she's at the train station. And he said, oh, well, so I'll go and ask her. I said, yeah, but he says, I don't care. So I said, I can do this. So I went down to the street, and it's actually one of the biggest streets in St. Petersburg. It's 5 lanes of traffic either way. And of course, the little man was red. So I was standing there and everyone was just staring at me. And I learned that there are 22 platforms at St. Petersburg train station because I couldn't find her at all. And then finally I came back and she was there by the car with this guy, Steve, who'd never seen me before. And I asked her to borrow $3 and she's Scottish. She wouldn't lend me the money. But we got there. So that was probably the most embarrassing thing. And in Croatia, I'm trying to think. I think it was probably I was doing a presentation to the tourist boards of Inland Dalmatia because we had a portal total Inland Dalmatia. Mm-hmm. And I'm not very good at presenting different things. And so I had my website was live, it was all, and I clicked to link to a page to show this is the kind of stuff that we do. And Google obviously chooses the adverts, and so it came up on this big screen, and then there was this thing about marrying Thai brides from Thailand and stuff in front of it, and everyone was, and I, obviously you think I'm Googling Thai brides all the time, but a friend of mine who's in her 60s and who's female, who's got no inclination for Thai brides, had the same advert on her page as well when she opened it, so that was fairly embarrassing, but not as bad as the one in St. Petersburg.
But maybe it was because in that region they Google it, so they serve ads because of the interests of the single guys there. Could be.
Imotski and Thai brides, maybe.
Yeah. So, gin tonic or beer?
Well, I'm a big gin tonic fan, I have to say. But I've drunk quite a lot of beer in my time, I suppose. Yeah.
And do you remember any glass of beer or bottle of beer? Not being perfect by the taste, but maybe the moment in...
Yeah, I think, I'm not a massive connoisseur of luxury, of speciality stuff in general, as my wife will tell. My only thing in Croatia is I have a thing when I order, and it's called... Aberja, which is anything but Žuja, is what I get, because I'm really not a fan of Žuja, although some of the beers from Zagrebačko Pivovara, like Stara Pramen and Nikšićko, are fine. But in terms of experiences, definitely Rwanda in 1994, because 1994 we came there just after the genocide. There was no electricity, there was no water, there was no food. There was no anything, but there was always somehow a case of cold beer, and there was this beer from Rwanda, from Zaire, from Congo, called Primus, and it was a 0.72 liter bottle, which is like bigger, which is always gets my vote, and then they had this Rwandese one called Mutzig, and those two I'll always remember because life was really stressful there. But probably the most two beer experiences that I've really remember in my life was the first one was in.
It's good if you remember.
Generally, the first one was in Munich when I was a student in 1989 or whatever, and I was working for in the summer the student service. So you would go in the morning and they would give you a job, and I had 6 days working in the Franziskaner brewery, beer factory. Mm-hmm. And my first job on the first day was to watch all the empty bottles come around the conveyor belt. Some were green, some were brown. And all the green ones I had to take out and put into a gaiba. And that was my job for the day, for 7 hours. And then after about 2 hours,
They didn't tell you that you are not supposed to drink.
No, they only gave me the empty ones. But then after 2 hours, this full bottle came in, and it was, the sell-by date was 2 weeks before. So I opened it and started drinking. And within 10 seconds, the supervisor said, "Englishman, what are you doing?" I said, "Oh, sorry." He says, "Come here." I thought I was going to be fired. He said, "If you want a beer, take a fresh one." And he just went to the production and gave me a fresh beer. And then it was the most amazing 6 days of my life. German factories are not very efficient, especially beer factories. But the second one was even more interesting. I went to work as an aid worker in Russia. And they sent me to on the edge of Siberia to Yekaterinburg in the Ural Mountains. And my first trip was to a town called Krasnofinsk, which had been closed to foreigners since before the revolution in 1917. And I was actually the first foreigner ever to go there in like almost 100 years. And so it was a big sort of celebration, and they put on this amazing event for me. As we drove in, I went to this, I saw this beer factory on the right-hand side, about 1 kilometre out of town. And then we had this amazing dinner with wines from Georgia, brandies from Armenia, champagne from Azerbaijan, vodka, of course, lots of toasting. And my Russian colleague said, "Oh, but Paul's a real beer fan." And the whole room went silent. And she goes, "But we saw the beer factory just outside. But because of distribution in the Soviet Union, they couldn't get the beer from the beer factory into the town. So they were all very, very embarrassed." And they said, "No problem. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, we will have a complete tour of the beer factory." And I was like, "Yay, davai, idemo pod stolom." And then we just drank. And then in the morning, I just woke up and I felt like, like there was a burger sitting on my head and stuff. And we had to go to a milk factory in the morning at 9 o'clock for the job. And then at 10 o'clock, I just wanted to die. And they said, "No, you have to go to this beer factory." So I went, and I was the guest of honor. And literally, I just, couldn't open my eyes. And they gave me this amazing tour. And it was run by a German whose father had been arrested during the war as a prisoner of war. And he'd married a local girl and then used his beer-making expertise to start this brewery. And this was his son now running it. And it was an amazing tour of... and then we went up to the director's office to try the beer. And there were 6 of us in the room. And the driver, who had a really bad head, said, no, I'm driving. And my friend said, no. And the director couldn't drink on duty. And they brought this bucket of beer. And they gave me this half-litre glass, and so I had to scoop out the beer like that, and I drank it, and I was and then they made me drink 4 of them, and then they brought the Azerbaijani champagne out again, and then they put me in the back of the larder on the way back to Yekaterinburg with 3 cases of beer, and I just literally it was the most worst field trip of my life.
What about food?
I really, I have to say with Croatian food, especially Dalmatian food, that it has completely changed my thinking. I mean, I came here and, the idea of eating octopus was disgusting. I'd had it once in Zanzibar in a curry, but this idea of... And I just thought, oof. But then I tried octopus salad, and I have to say it's one of the most amazing dishes. And I always say to foreigners, if there's one thing you try that is outside your comfort zone when you come to Dalmatia, try octopus salad, because and I guarantee you'll be amazed by it. And a number of foreigners have done that, and I've tried that. I used to hate asparagus, but the wild asparagus that comes here and the way it's done, and it's just phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And what I love about Dalmatia and Croatia is the freshness of the local product and how it's all very seasonal. Because in the UK, we go to the supermarket and you get a tomato 24 hours of the day, 12 months of the year, but you don't have any taste in it. And you come here and the taste here is incredible. And, I appreciated that when I moved here, but I appreciated it even more when I went back to the UK, having got used to this and then tried the stuff there. And I was like, what the hell is this about? So I really, really, really appreciate that. I struggle with tripizza, with tripe. And in fact, I was invited to a very special dinner in the basement of O'Hara Pizzeria a few years ago by Matija Babic and a couple of others. And it was a really, really amazing gourmet experience. And I was really excited. And then I got given a plate of tripizza. And I was like, I'm not sure I can finish this, But it was actually, for tripizza, it was really good. But apparently, it was this is like the Croatia's best tripizza. And it was fantastic. The seafood's amazing here.
Did you try pohane tripice?
Yeah,
you did?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The one thing I tried, which was really interesting, was puch.
On
the puchi out there, yeah. So that was probably the most interesting thing I've tried here. But in general, I've been very lucky with my wife and my punica. They're amazing cooking, so I get a lot of really good homemade stuff, and the beetroot, the tsikle, and all the different stuff. It's fantastic. So yeah, I think Croatia's got an amazing regional offer, and this is again, if you look at tourism and you look at gourmet tourism in Germany, in Spain, in France, and Italy, it's big business. And if you look at gourmet tourism here in Croatia, we have so much better stuff with so much more variety, with so many more authentic experiences. Anthony Bourdain here was like world-class wine, world-class food, world-class cheese. We're doing nothing with it.
And how it is in England, people often say that you don't have a cuisine.
We've got curry. What do you want? I mean, actually, authentic English cuisine is really, really interesting. But it's actually it's not very mainstream to get to the authentic stuff. But I can't say I'm very proud of the English cuisine or anything else really from the UK. That's authentic.
Yes. What were the most interesting countries you visited? Except Croatia, of course.
Well, Croatia's number one because it's the best at everything, as you know. But Croatia is a fascinating country. But
I agree.
Croatia is actually more fascinating when you get away from where people go. When you get into continental Croatia, when you get into some of these islands and you find out, you get more immersed in the community and they invite you into certain things, and you find some. One of the most interesting evenings I had here was after Vukovar. I went to the remembrance service 2 years ago, November the 18th, and there's a crazy English guy called Steve who lives in Vinkovci, who fought for Croatia as a volunteer in the war and became wounded. And he lives in Vinkovci, and he opened an English pub in a field in the middle of nowhere. And every year he hosts all the foreign volunteers for a barbecue after the parade, and so I got invited to go to that, and that was a really really interesting thing that you would never hear about, for example. Yeah. And there were lots of those things that happen in Croatia that you never ever hear about. But in terms of countries, I would say, I love Georgia, Georgia. It's
because of wine, because
of food, because of hospitality, because of beauty. It's so green, and it's got it's citrus. And then it's got this incredible culture going back, and these amazing stuff. And Tbilisi was a great city when I lived there in 1995.
You lived in 5 countries, right?
I lived in I've lived in Germany, Japan, Russia, Georgia, Croatia, Kenya, Rwanda,
it's
Somalia. It's about 10, I think. Maybe.
Almost a 10.
Yeah. England, sadly. So
back to Georgia.
So Georgia, and it's a really vibrant place, and the people are great, and it's just love it. Unique place. Syria, before the obviously the war here, I was there on this trip with the Lebanese nuns. In fact, I was hiking in the desert with 6 Lebanese nuns, and
without camels.
Without camels, yeah. And the reason I called the book Lebanese Nuns Don't Ski was I was hiking with these nuns, and one of them was a 28-year-old, quite a cute little nun there, and she was explaining that she used to be an account executive with SmithKline Beecham. She had a mobile phone, she had a boyfriend, she was skiing every weekend, she had a great life, and then she found God. And so we were talking, and I was like, is there anything you...
So you met her at the wrong time.
I met her an interesting time in her life, and I asked her, was there anything that she missed about her former life, and she said skiing. And I said, a Lebanese nun's not allowed to ski. And she says, no. And I said, that's my book title. So that's why I called it Lebanese Nuns Don't Ski. So I would say that Syria is stunning. Iran was amazing. Iran is just, and it's still kind of off the beaten path because of the politics and so on. Bolivia. Just blew me away. But that was 30 years ago. I'm not sure how it is today. Russia is a phenomenal country. It's massive, and being out in Yekaterinburg in the nature there, it was just was mind blowing. But I have to say, Croatia's up there. It really is up there. It's got so much, and it just needs to market itself differently to get away from this obsession with sun, sea, cruise ships, numbers. Because we have so many experiences. Safe, authentic lifestyle destination, 12 months a year, all over the country. It's not that hard to do.
Koliko se osjećaš Hrvatom?
I feel a great love and a great fondness for the country and its people. Some of them are pretty difficult, and I think my relationship with Croatia has been difficult over the years. But I'm definitely at peace with things now, and I definitely talk more about we when I talk about Croatia than I do. I feel more at home in Croatia than the UK for sure. Mm-hmm. And every time I go back to the UK, which is every 3-4 years, I feel like I'm going to a totally different country. And when I come back to Croatia, I feel like I'm home. And I think I'll never understand your mentality because you guys really are crazy. But I think I understand it better than most foreigners. And I think that surprises a lot of people.
What's the craziest thing about our mentality?
You're just so negative. So negative about everything. It's just, and your ability to complain and just to put people down is just, and then when it comes to football, you can have 550,000 people on the streets of Zagreb celebrating 11 guys kicking a ball around Russia. But when it comes to protesting for your democratic rights,
no one is on the street.
It's like, let's complain in the cafe and that's it. Or let's get on the keyboard warrior stuff. I find that incredible,
Let's comment on Index.
Yeah, that's it, and when you write and the article, the whole thing about articles is like you see a title, and the whole philosophy is kakvi su komentari. No one actually reads. It's the title and straight to the comments, and it's just like, it's amazing.
Thank you, Paul, for this interview.
Thank you very much.
I think we talked much about the things you haven't talked before for Croatian media.
Apart from my love of Julia.
Yeah. We covered your life from 18-year-old till now. There is still a gap of 5 years, but probably that's the time when you went to school for spies.
Absolutely. Sponsored by Mossad, but don't tell anyone.
Okay. Thank you once more.
Thanks very much.
Zahvaljujem vam na 2 sata izuzetne koncentracije. Zaslužili ste pivo ili već neko piće. Paul i ja smo za vrijeme snimanja također slistili koje. Do neke iduće epizode. Lijep pozdrav.